All right, so I'm not at all worried about the BRICS conspiring against the US dollar. I'm not. The US dollar is not going to collapse. It's silly to fall for this fear-mongering. Folks, we have 330 million consumers in the United States. All right. By far and away, we're the wealthiest, most productive economy in the world. Now, as a per capita, we're not the wealthiest. I think Luxembourg and Norway are wealthier per capita, but how many people live in Norway? 10? Who cares? So, what happens is, the United States, we are a consumption-based society. It's based on our fractional reserve. All right, so a lot of people say, we should go back to gold. Oh, those people don't know what they're talking about. How would you get a mortgage if you went back to gold standard? You know how money's created? It's by lending. You go to the bank, you think the bank has the money in the vaults? No, I think right now, it's been for almost 10 years now, a 0% reserve requirement. There isn't any cash in the vault. I mean, there's probably some, but there's not very much cash. You go to get a mortgage at the bank, that has just created money out of nowhere. Just ones and zeros on the computer. Created money. You go buy a credit card, you pay for something on a credit card, that's created money. There's no backing of that from any asset whatsoever. Complete fractional reserve. All right. So we have the fractional reserve, which allows us to consume. We're a consumer-heavy society. Why do you think the cost of services keeps going up? And if you read my book, Relax and Retire, I talk about this. Because services do your consumption. Your consumption is based on services, a service economy, not a manufacturing economy, not a goods economy. Now, we still manufacture some stuff, don't get me wrong, weapons. We still export a whole lot of grain. We still export a whole lot of oil and gas because we're basically the only game in town when it comes to refineries. But by and large, we import more than we export. That's why we have trade deficits, which is fine if you have a fractional reserve society. Because what we do is we buy goods that China makes with what? What do we purchase these goods with? The cell phone I'm on right now, made in China. By poor Chinese people relative to our way of life. However, those Chinese people who are making these cell phones are a hell of a lot richer now than they were 15, 20 years ago. That's a fact, Jack. So China makes a phone, they sells up the phone. Supply creates its own demand, as we say, in supply side economics. How do we pay for that phone? With Chinese yuan? No, with US dollars. So China then is reliant on us to buy their goods, are they not? Well, we're relying on them to sell us their goods, yeah. And guess what? Because we've lifted millions, hundreds of millions of Chinese out of poverty, they've become accustomed to a lifestyle that their previous generations never could have envisioned. So if they now turn away from us, the only game in town when it comes to consuming, no one else consumes like the United States. So it's not even close. Not even close. So they conspire against us, say we're no longer going to take your dollars. In fact, some guy on my YouTube channel says they're going to get rid of all their dollars. It's going to flood our economy with dollars. It's going to create hyperinflation. Who's going to buy their goods? Who? India? India, they got money? Not what, a third of or a half of Indians don't even have electricity? It's evil. I mean, Big Green is big evil. Big Green isn't pro-environment. Big Green is anti-people. Just keep that in mind. Anti-brown and black people primarily. Environmentalists hate brown and black people. They hate them. Which is why a lot of brown and black people don't have electricity and plumbing, because the environmentalists don't want them to have access to pipelines and oil, coal, natural gas, never mind uranium for nuclear. Green hates brown and black people. And if you're a Big Green, you know what I'm talking about. You know it in your mind's eye. You're like, yeah, he's kind of right. You love Europeans because they're sophisticated and they're white, but you hate brown and black people. That's just a fact, Jack. And when you say there's too many people, you're not talking about people in Boston, Massachusetts. You're talking about people in Bombay, Beijing, Nigeria. You're racist. It's just a fact. Big Green is big racist. Anyway, so now we have all this money that we spend because of fractional reserve. We create money out of nothing, literally out of nothing. So that gives us the ability to buy a house, to buy a car, to buy a cell phone, to consume. All right, so we buy these things. What happens? Who do we buy them from? Do we buy them from ourselves? No, we buy them from foreign nations. Thus, we export our dollars, we import our goods. That's how we import their goods. That's a trade deficit. So these countries who are now reliant, they have these huge manufacturing facilities, these huge roads to move product, these huge mining operations. You know, Russia, Africa, they have all the resources. China, India, Vietnam, they have all the labor. It all comes to good old US of A. So they spend all that money getting their manufacturing bases up, getting their labors up, moving product, resources into China for the ultimate end. I am sitting here on a cell phone that's made in China with mining that was done in Africa, probably some was through Russia, whatnot, and it ends up in my hands so I can do this while I'm walking. How did I pay for this? With US dollars, baby. So now China receives our US dollars, we export our dollars. What does China do with that dollar? Well, China says we need to invest this someplace because we'd like to make a return on principal and guarantee we get our money back. So what do they do with that dollar? Is they buy our bonds. They buy our bonds because, again, we are the only game in town when it comes to higher interest rates and a rule of law for the most part, other than Sniffy Joe and January 6 people and going after Trump. We have a rule of law that says at the end of the day, we will back our obligations. The U.S. government will back our obligations. We're not Argentina. We don't renege on our bonds. And as such, China says we're getting a high interest rate relative to the worldwide economy, and we're getting a safety of the U.S. dollar as almost as a gold standard, essentially, for the reserve currency. You think the rupee gives you that same? No. You think the rubles gives that same? Nope. You think the yuan gives that same? Nope. So now they're not going to take our dollars anymore. So they have all these people who are now accustomed in China to a middle-class life for Chinese, which, of course, with us would be nothing, but for them it's like, dude, my parents didn't have freaking lights. Now I got lights and running water, and I got 3 hots and a cot. I'm living large. So China says, no, we're not going to do business with America anymore. We're going to do business with who? I mean, who? Freaking Portugal? Well, Portugal's part of the EU, so probably not even that. So who? Freaking Tanzania? I mean, come on. Stupid. That's dumb. There's no money there for them to manufacture, to sell to. So if they say we're not going to sell to America anymore, we don't want your dollars, what happens then? Well, we'll be hurt for sure, because we'll have to revisit manufacturing our own stuff, which will make in labor, will make the price of stuff go up. We'll consume less, 100%. Again, the reason we can consume so much is because we have fractional reserve and we have cheap labor that we get from overseas. So if we had to bring all this back here, it's going to make prices go up. Without question, that would. Would that be a good thing? Probably, frankly. It would be a less of a consumption-based society, more of a productive society. But we're still pretty productive. We still export a hell of a lot of grain. We still export a hell of a lot of soy, a hell of a lot of corn. We still export a hell of a lot of weapons. We still export a hell of a lot of natural gas and oil refineries. We're putting other countries' refineries out of business. They can't compete with our technical prowess. Now, our military's faltering left and right because we've gone this insane social justice issue where we have idiots in charge of it. But that, you know, hopefully we learn, like we know, for instance, that China right now, its Navy is going to defeat ours. That's just a fact. So here in a couple of years, if not sooner, we will no longer be able to have boats off the coast of Taiwan, because China will say, no, you're not coming here. And we'll just back out. Just a fact, man. Because China's actually building ships a hell of a lot more than we are, and they're not building ships with idiots who pretend they are something that they're not in charge, who say, my pronouns are. That's not what China's doing. So they'll have domination of the oceans on that side of the world. I doubt they'll have the desire to come over here, but they may. You know, we'll have to deal with that at that point. But again, what does a war do? It creates chaos and destruction for your people, like what happened in World War I in the United States, or in Europe, and then World War II in the United States, even here, even though there's no battle here. but it created hardships. Politicians, even politicians that are appointed by the Politburo, they don't want hardship for their people, especially people who've got accustomed to a certain way of living. All right. So all the silliness about the dollar crashing, no one wants the dollar. It's dumb, man. It's dumb. Because we still are the only game in town for consumption. No one consumes like we do. If we stop consuming their goods because they don't take our dollars, all that is going to go to put there, to pot. There isn't anyone to replace that. And as such, guess what's going to happen? They're going to go broke before we do. And there are people who say, I'm not going back to chasing after a chicken in my backyard with no lights on at night. I'm accustomed to now eating and having a place to poop and flush. But I have to go to the stream next door. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to still demand our dollars. It won't be forever. I mean, they'll collapse on it, ultimately come for sure. But it's not going to, the BRICS don't have the buying power of the United States. Don't forget, China and India still don't like each other. China and Russia still don't like each other. Now, the enemy of my friend, I grant you. Yeah, but guess what? We might be the enemy of the enemy or whatever. We still got the purchasing power. And King Dollar rules the world. It will continue to do for many years to come. Love your thoughts. We'll see you.